our next guest is Walter Lawrence, and a.k.a. T.W. Lawrence. That's the name he publishes under. He's a business owner and the author of Take Me to Texas, a collection of 12 short stories. His entire book has been recreated as an audio version, and the short story Dusty, Lord Show Me the Way is being distributed as a free gift to Walter's readers and potential readers. Welcome, Walt.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I think this is a three-peat for you. I think you've been on the show with me once and with Tim at the Decatur Book Festival once, and then now you're back again.
Yes, that's true.
We're glad to have you. So we've got a little bit of a Texas theme going because Diana is calling in from Texas, and you write stories about Texas.
Yes.
So Take Me to Texas is finding a niche of readers. It's finding people who live in Texas as well as those like yourself who live in other states but at their heart remain Texans and are always going to be Texans. So why do you think Take Me to Texas resonates with so many people?
Well, there's two things to it. One, Texas as a concept is one of the... There was an article in Entrepreneur Magazine about 6 months ago, and it listed the top 10 brands that people recognized. And Texas as a state was like number 10.
Was a brand. Wow.
Yes. So if you say Texas, people have an image. That's true here in the U.S., and it's true worldwide. People have an idea of what a Texan is. And so Texas sells. For me, it's a strong draw personally because I was born at the edge of the hill country. But more importantly, there was a professor of English at University of Texas. His name was J. Frank Dobie, who was very popular during the 1950s. He basically took tales that were common that people knew, and he wrote them. And he was criticized because people would say, you're just recycling stories that everybody knows. He says, let me tell you this. The story belongs to him who tells it best. And in the bookstore at UT, that saying is etched into the wall. And when we went there and I saw that, I said, that's exactly how I feel about it. So what my ambition is to tell a very good story and let people enjoy it. I believe it's a very good story when they can be taken out of the moment and into the story and held there in that spirit of disbelief for the 15 minutes or so the short story takes to read or now to hear. And then they come back and say, okay, that was worth the time I spent doing that.
Well, and I know they're fictional stories, but they have a little bit of autobiographical background to some of the stories that aren't immediately apparent to the readers.
Well, of the 12 stories, there are 3 of them that are based on experiences with my family, more or less loosely based. Several of them are conceptual. I had an idea. There was an event. I wrote about that. Dusty is the only one that I did not realize what the origin of that story was until it was recorded as an audiobook. And then when I heard it, I said, that's why it was written. Because I just sat down one day and just started writing and came up with this story. And then, of course, revised it. But when Sandy got Moby to record it for me, and the first time that I heard it, I remember it was on a Saturday morning. I was sitting in my bathrobe. I popped open the email, listened to it, and I cried.
Wow. It is a really powerful story.
Yes.
So I know you've had your whole book of 12 stories made into an audiobook. Why did you decide to do that?
As Diana was saying, if you reach people in different ways, and one of the pieces of feedback I kept getting was, I'd like to listen to this in my car, because in Atlanta and other metroplexes we have such long commute times. Do you have it available, as a podcast or as a CD? And the answer at that time was no. I could get a microphone and record it myself. But then I had met Sandy at an event and followed up with that, and then it became apparent. I had 2 choices. I could record it myself and go through that process, or I could let the professionals do it and take care of it. And once I heard the sample voices that they had, I said, there's no way that I'm recording that. So we let the pros do it, because it came out to be a very good product and worth listening to.
So you mentioned Dusty, and I want to talk about Dusty because it's one of the short stories that you're actually distributing as a free download for folks. So can you describe a little bit about the story of Dusty and why you've decided to distribute it that way?
Well, Dusty is actually the name of the horse in this thing, not the cowboy. When I, after listening to it several times, I said, you know what? I never gave the cowboy a name. It's just the cowboy and Dusty, which is fine. But it's a story that basically is autobiographical because the cowboy realizes that the cowboy way, in the late 1880s, had come to a close, and he was going to have to do something else with the rest of his life. And so he's on his journey to this mythical town of Cowtown, and he stops and he asks the Lord for direction. He gets off his horse, he prays and said, basically, you've always guided my footsteps. I'm asking for your direction this time. Please help me. Gets back on the horse, lets go of the reins, and says, well, Dusty, you know as well as I do, so take us to Cowtown. And so it actually is a metaphor of deciding how do I go into the next stage of what I'm doing career-wise, life-wise, that kind of thing. What was interesting was about a week or so ago, I was at Richard Kirby's Bling meeting, which is a networking group of executives, some of whom are looking for jobs. And I handed out the disc to them, and I said, I didn't realize until now, but this is appropriate for job seekers because you're all trying to decide, what am I going to do next? So the audience is broader than I thought. One of the interesting things to me is that the production of Dusty and the distribution of Dusty, it's very short. It's only a 3-minute audio, so you can get in and out very quickly. It's part of a journey that I have sort of stumbled upon, so I'm headed to Cowtown in my own way, and it has opened doors that I haven't expected and introduced me to people that I would never otherwise would have pursued. I've had people who have heard it and say, is this a Bible study, A? And B, and said, where are the other episodes to this story? To which I said, well, I just written the one. They said, well, yeah, but you can write the others, right? And I said, well, how many would you want? Well, it ranges from 3 to 13, which is, so a lot of demand on that. But I've been working with some people who are very good at doing Bible studies and lead Sunday school classes, and they're going to help me at least pick the topical areas to write with.
So it's interesting that, just like Diana was saying, that her books and writing kind of come out of the requests of readers and agents and what people are looking for. A similar thing is happening with Dusty, that you're actually seeing opportunities for new product avenues and different roads that you can travel down because of just starting on one path with Dusty and starting to put it out there.
Right, but one of the just as a writer and personally, one of the things that has been very growth oriented to me is that the media going from printed word to spoken word requires a little bit different way of telling the story, because in the way that I write, it's very obvious to see who is speaking just by spacing it and indentation and that kind of thing, not available to people just listening to it. So it had to be structured slightly different, a few more he said, she said type of thing, so that people could follow it just from being told. But when we think about going back historically, stories around the campfire, there was no written word. So I've sort of come full circle now to telling campfire stories.
So it'll be interesting to see if that affects the way that you actually write stories in the future.
Yes, it will. Because, so a lot of writers, when they're doing their critiquing, will read it out loud, see what it sounds like, but yet put it back on paper. This is just a continuation of doing that.
Well, and I know that you're looking for some specific types of connections to distribute Dusty. Can you describe what kind of people and what kind of organizations you're wanting to connect with?
The appeal of Dusty is the fact that it's basically a cowboy story, a cowboy and his horse. For example, I played the story to my grandson, who I discovered didn't know what a cowboy was. He couldn't identify it.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, to which I was taken aback.
I'm sure.
Of course, he was not raised in Texas. He was raised here in Georgia, so, what does one expect? But I have been actually hooking up with seminaries, and there's an outfit called Cowboy Church that basically where people attend church on horseback. So those are the venues for it. I see the audience as being more heavily in the West and the Southwest, and so I'm just beginning to find what those avenues are.
So if any of our listeners have connections to churches or pastors in the West and Southwest, that would be a good thing for them to send to you.
That's right. What we've done, I've made it available just because it's part of what I consider my Christian walk to give away this story, because I mean it for an act of inspiration. So we set up a website called projectdusty.com. They can listen to it. It's actually a YouTube video. They can view it on YouTube. They can view it on this website. But on the website, if they like it, they can pull down an MP3.
That's great. Well, and tell them again how they can find the website.
It's projectdusty.com, one word.
That's great. Thanks, Walt. Can you hang out with us? And we're going to
Sure.
talk to Sandy now.